This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
Antifa is going to be designated a domestic terrorist organization. In July 2025, several members of an Antifa cell ambushed and opened fire on officers at an ICE facility in Alvarado, Texas, shooting one officer in the neck. Also in July 2025, 3 Antifa members were charged with assaulting a police officer during a violent riot outside an ICE facility in Portland, which for weeks prior had been under siege from the local Antifa terror cell. In February 2024, a transgender Antifa terrorist detonated an explosive device outside of the office of the Republican Attorney General of Alabama. In July 2023, Antifa members linked to abortionist group Jane's Revenge firebombed pro-life facilities and vandalized churches. In January 2022, a suspected Antifa member was arrested for bringing a pipe bomb to a pro-Trump event. In January 2021, an Antifa supporter threatened to shoot police officers and Trump supporters outside of the Florida State Capitol building. Again, I could continue to list many more examples for those in the room who don't believe this is a serious threat to American safety and our national security, but this administration knows that it is.
The man accused of opening fire at a Sacramento news station, ABC 10, has been arrested by the FBI after posting bail for his initial arrest.
We believe there was a political motive behind his actions. And in fact, when officers went and did a search warrant of his vehicle and next to a anti-Trump book, they found a handwritten note. And the handwritten note read, "Do not support Patel, Bongino, and A.G. Biondi. They're next." And the note was signed C.K. from above.
You're only seeing this in people who are under 50 years of age. If it were better recognition or diagnosis, you'd see it in 70-year-old men. I've never seen this happening in people my age.
Don't take Tylenol. There's no downside. Don't take it. You'll be uncomfortable. It won't be as easy, maybe, but don't take it. If you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol.
That is a Christian woman. This is a public display of Christianity directly taken from the gospel. And I knew that there would be so many people out there that would be confused by Erica Kirk's display of the full values of Christ Jesus before the entire world. This is what Jesus called to forgive on a personal level. And that doesn't change the public punishment and the process, the trial. That'll all come. But personal forgiveness, we're called to do this in the Lord's Prayer itself. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We are here live, of course, in the Charlie Kirk studio. We're flying in the missing man formation still here in Phoenix, Arizona. Today is September 23rd, 2025. And though we are down one man, I'm joined by a woman here in studio today, a fine Christian woman at that. It's Allie Beth Stuckey.
Thanks so much for having me. It is an honor, truly.
I know, and you know, it's funny because, you know, here we are, and you and I had been chatting about doing an episode talking about our favorite death penalty group or anti-death penalty group, the Innocence Project.
Yeah.
And, you know, here we are in a situation where, you know, we were just doing an episode the other day where we were talking about how, you know, in this situation, there's been a guy who's received the death penalty in the wake of this leftist violence, and who knows how long until the Innocence Project comes in and starts to defend him.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to any progressive entity, organization, or even just idea, you get closer to the truth by taking them at the opposite of what they mean. So when they say love, they actually mean hate. When they say tolerance, they actually mean intolerance. And when they say innocence, they typically mean guilty. And the Innocence Project takes up the cause of typically, I think, very guilty people and just tries to get them off death row.
I call them the Innocence Project.
There you go. That's good.
Yeah,
yep.
It took me a while to come up with that. I went pretty hard on them back in the day on Rodney Reed because that story was coming around. And there were some people, by the way, even on like the conservative side,
it's hard, Jack,
that got a little twisted up on that one. And then I just started reading the evidence and I was like, no.
No, I'm so glad that you're willing to talk about that because, yeah, there aren't very many people on our side who are willing to wade into that conversation, but we need to, like, rightly ordered justice matters.
And this is why, because I've gone through stuff like that, and you have as well, and in cases that we weren't related to, that we were much more impartial on, having no idea that we'd be faced with one ourselves, is that it's like, I feel like in a way I was preparing myself for trying to figure out what happened here in a case where it's my friend who was the victim, and I have friends who were the eyewitnesses, and I don't even know how to put it into words. You know what I mean, though?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm curious to hear what you think, like the balance of all of us, we want the truth, and no one thinks that you should just take whatever the government tells you as absolute truth.
Ever.
So you want to ask questions, but at the same time, it can be so easy to go down these rabbit holes of paranoia. Is it this? Is it that? So how do you balance that of critical thinking, asking questions without going down the conspiracy route?
Well, you know, it all, for me, it just comes back to evidence. I just say, what actual evidence do we have? And if you stick with that and you use that hard evidence as your, I really don't want to say lodestar, but if you use it, or North Star, but if you use that as your rubric, if you use that as your litmus test, it really prevents you, because it could always be something else. Anything could be something else. But if you say, all right, do I have evidence of this? All right, what do I have evidence of? So in this case, we have the bullet casings, you know, we have some stuff about a gun, we have a gun that's been recovered, now we have DNA links, we have text messages, we have Discord, so it's like, I just go on that, and then when someone says, well, what if this, cool, great, show me the evidence. Right, exactly. Like I don't dismiss it, but at the same time, if you can't provide the evidence of it, then I just can't go there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And a lot of people have been messaging me, oh, have you heard this? Have you heard that? And I'm just
I've heard
like,
it all. I've heard it all. And by the way, I don't try to shut that down either, unless there's something where, because this horrific turn of events, I find myself, and we're in this case where, we know people who were there, and you can walk around, and it's been so amazing seeing the fact that the staff of this building that we're sitting in right now has come in every day. Yeah. The staff over at the Turning Point Center, they've come in every day. Yeah. They're right here. They're willing to work, even having gone through that grief themselves. Yeah. But they're staying on mission. And so as certain things have bubbled up, I can go over, hey, what's this thing? And one of the big ones, was Charlie wearing a vest? He wasn't, and that was something where it was like, we weren't sure at first, and you ask around, and there you go. And it's one of those things where it's like, I wish he was. Don't think it would have changed the situation here, but it is what it is. But I wanted to even take that back a second, because something that was really striking to me is that when we see this incredible outpouring of love, and thank you so much for being there on Sunday, and there were so many people there. I don't even know everyone who was there, and then I'm like, I was asking around, I said, I didn't see this guy, and they're like, oh yeah, he's over here, and I don't even know, can't even tell yet. And it was such an outpouring of love and such an outpouring of goodness and godliness, and the Christian gospel on full display with Erica's incredible Christian witness that she performed, and the hard work that she performed in doing that. And in the wake of this assassination, we've seen more violence now from Jimmy Kimmel not being on air for 6 days. Because there was this leftist that shoots up, and we just played the video, an ABC affiliate, and is talking about like Charlie and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and all this stuff. And we found his Twitter account, and he's just raging, absolute raging. Targeted me, targeted you, targeted everybody. Just raging leftist. And so it's like, it shows you the difference, shows you which team you want to be on. Yeah. But there's a real threat out there.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, it was It'd be laughable if it weren't so sad that you've got people like Ben Stiller and all of these celebrities speaking up for free speech, not after the guy gets assassinated for free speech, but because someone gets temporarily suspended for 5 days because of something that he said from his employer. Like, I'm going to question your
Like, you got a vacation?
Yes, I'm going to question your First Amendment bona fides if you spoke up in the latter case, but not in the former case. But that's leftism. It's disordered.
$16 million a year, by the way. Like, I think he'll be all right.
Boo-hoo.
I think he'll be okay.
Boo-hoo. Okay, so this guy shoots up the ABC affiliate because he's taking vengeance for Jimmy Kimmel.
I mean, you look at his Twitter account and he's going he had been prior to this, tweeting about Jimmy Kimmel, et cetera, getting really radicalized about this.
Yeah.
And then just leaves this note that it's very hard to understand. He's sort of like trying to hit all of the, the current hot topics on the left and things like that. And it's
slaughtered in the streets, their communities absolutely razed to the ground because they were angry about supposed systemic racism that they claimed killed George Floyd, who wasn't even a hero, yet one of our heroes dies.
There were black teenagers that got shot up in Jazz.
Exactly. There was an 8-year-old little girl, Sequoia Turner, was
down in Atlanta.
Exactly. And what happens when one of our legitimate heroes
I believe
dies?
they were trying to go to Wendy's.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And they were, I think, burning the Wendy's.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that these BLM rioters, they stuck their gun in the back seat of the car and killed this little 8-year-old girl. So that's what happens on that side. It's not even just a leftist problem. It's an evilness problem. And then on our side, when our legitimate hero dies, there's not violence, but there's vigils. And I just don't know how someone could see, especially a professing Christian right now, could not see the perfect dichotomy between light versus darkness. And it's not primarily Republican versus Democrat, although that matters. It's primarily light versus darkness. It's so hard for me to see how someone could not see that.
I think the vast majority of people do see it, but I also think this is what, so I posted this last night, and this is a classic tactic of the left. It's also well known in psychology from narcissists, which is called Davo, the great Davo tactic: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. So this is something that's known, and by the way, men and women, right? It's and people talk about it in relationships all the time. But what you're seeing, of course, is because something horrible happened to Charlie, they have to deny what happened. They have to attack Charlie, and then they reverse the victim and offender. So they have to somehow become the victim. So Jimmy Kimmel, right, becomes the victim, and it's Republicans' fault. It's Charlie's fault. And what was Jimmy doing? He was blaming MAGA. He was saying, "This is, you guys did this. It was not one of us. It was definitely one of you." And by the way, Charlie, and this is where you get like the cluster B responses of it didn't happen. Well, if it did happen, it wasn't that big of a deal. And if it was that big of a deal, then it should have happened. And finally, well, you should be glad it happened.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's so interesting that it's like, once you see the tactics and once you see the playbook and the pattern, you see it over. It's like that scene in The Matrix. You just see it over and over.
As you're talking, I'm like, oh, that's exactly what they do on abortion. Yep. That's what they do on every single thing.
Literally every topic.
Yep. And they use, Charlie and I always talked about this, how they use empathy to convince people to go down the tactic that you just explained. Well, don't you feel bad for this person over here, but ignore this over here? It's a distortion.
It is total distortion. So, and it typically it's very feminine, by the way. So what they'll do is they'll take the normal female nurturing impulse, which is obviously in a rightly ordered society is for family and children, and that's like women love gardening and nurturing. Like my wife, like she's like, I'm like, why do you want to go and plant stuff and grow it? And I'm like,
it's caretaking.
And I'm like, yeah, it's care, and that's female. I'm like, I just don't have that. I'm like, I get that she likes it, fine, so not into it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I want to build something. I want to go out and do something. I want to go out and, if anyone's messing with us, then I got to go take care of that too. And, but if you disassociate that from the family, which requires, billions of dollars of propaganda and decades upon decades of cultural conditioning, which has been able to pierce the veil like a little bit, at least, then what you're doing is you're switching that over to quote unquote marginalized groups.
Yeah.
So a marginalized group, like, and at-risk pregnant teen or an illegal alien who's living in the shadows trying to just find a better life for themselves, or the marginalized transgender community. And so you're taking that caretaking impulse, which is good, and switching it to something that ultimately is either negative for society, negative for the person involved, and then can become extremely negative for anyone who gets targeted as in the way, which seems like what is the case with Charlie, with what happened here.
100%. That is spot on. I call it misplaced mothering because naturally we have this mothering instinct. It's why girls play with dolls when we're growing up. Well, that doesn't go away. It's going to channel itself towards something. Ideally, it channels itself towards children or women who are called not to get married, channels itself towards maybe discipleship, caring for children in other ways. But when you are not channeling that mothering instinct towards kids, you'll channel it towards animals, you'll channel it towards your profession, you'll channel it towards plants, or you will channel it towards political causes. And so you take under your wing the illegal migrant or the trans person, and you become in your mind their mama bear. Well, we know how mama bears react when someone tries to hurt their cubs. They're vicious. And so all of these liberal women have misplaced mothering, and they're acting defensive about these people that they don't actually know out of a disordered motherhood instinct.
It's so perfect. And it actually tracks. Now, I don't think that's exactly what Tyler Robinson was doing. It's along those lines, but because he was male,
it's different.
What he was actually doing was, you would say white knighting if it was a male-female relationship, but in this case, I think we have to say pink knighting.
Oh gosh,
because
so many layers of depravity.
Because it's a male-male relationship, and I've even looked at some of the furry pornography that he was looking at, and I've seen a lot of the chats and stuff that people haven't even been interested, stuff that I can't even show here.
Yikes.
And to realize how completely disordered this individual was. But again, in that case, it's the misplacement of saying, I want to protect my loved one, and I view Charlie Kirk as a threat to them, and so I'm doing this out of protection in a totally backwards and messed up way that leads them to do this. Because something I learned in Guantanamo, having spent time there, is that, and people say, oh, those guys are nuts, they're all nuts. And yeah, to be sure, right? But they don't think they are.
Right.
They think they're
scary
rational.
Part.
They think they're rational. So when you can pick apart the ideology, their rationalization, their justification to understand what went wrong, which is what I always try to do, then you can create a profile. Then you can figure out the pattern. And this is something that, just from a basic federal law enforcement perspective, like when we had serial killers, when we had Jeffrey Dahmer running around, we used to do this. And yet for some reason, in this specific instance of the radical left and radical trans shooters, we don't do it.
Yeah. It's so true. And recognizing those patterns is actually important. And we're propagandized against recognizing patterns. But I mean, those things have literally been passed down to us for generations, noticing patterns for the survival of our species. So it's actually just prudence.
Yeah. So, don't notice, don't track, don't look at things that, seem to have a message. And it's like, so many people, especially on the right, when Charlie was hit, we said, hey, we think this is what it is, and that ended up being it, and they're doing everything they can. I understand you have to run. I know you've got a flight.
Thank you so much, though, for having me.
You.
I'm so honored to be able to hand this off, and you're doing a great job in honoring Charlie's legacy, so keep going.
God bless you, Allie Beth.
Thank you.
We'll have to do a much longer. I'm getting so wrapped up in their conversation. I'm like, all right, she had a flight, and I'm getting all these messages. Jack, she got to go.
No, it's all good. Thank you so much, Jack.
And we're going to have to do a longer one of these for sure.
For sure.
We will. Folks, the great Allie Beth Stuckey, make sure you are going to follow her across all platforms once, of course, you've subscribed to the latest Human Events Daily. And feel free, if you got to run, it's no problem. And look, folks, this is what we're up against. We're up against a people that will spread deception operations, that will lie about Jimmy Kimmel, that will lie about what's going on, that will distract you. And I'm not saying that it works on you. I'm not saying that it works on everyone you know, but it works on some of them, and it works on enough. And those people are out there, and they're getting madder, and they're getting angrier. And then one of them is going to pick up a gun and head to the local ABC station, or worse, head to a campus. And look, this is all real. This is the real world. Somebody has to say it. When President Trump made the designation yesterday of Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization and opened up new authorities to be able to go against them, there's a real threat out there. It's 100% real. And don't let anyone ever tell you for a second that this is a both sides issue. Charlie Kirk was shot and killed in cold blood. The ABC station was just shot up. We've been receiving death threats, seen death threats at other stations and other things that have gone on. There are bullets flying. This is the real world, and they will not stop until they are stopped. Luigi Maggioni is still coming. Be right back. Human Events Daily continues. Real America's Voice.